Olá, corre, sim. Corre, vou fazer. Vou fazer, sim. Corre, linhador.
Prepara, sim. Eu vou. Sim. Correto. Qual é? Correto, sim. Preparado, sim. Eu vou. Sim. Atacar! Qual é a sua ordem? Preparado? Sim. Qual é? Eu. Sim. Correto. Preparado? Eu vou. Sim. Correto. Sim. Atacar!
Vou fazer. Sim. Correto.
Qual é? Correto. Sim. Eu vou. Sim. Sim. Eu vou. Sim. Preparado? Sim. Correto. Sim. Correto. Sim. Correto. Sim. Sim. Correto. Sim.
Correto.
Sim. Sim. Correto. Eu vou. Sim. Sim.
Olá, vou executar.
Preparado? Correto. Atacar! Qual é a sua? Atacar! Sim, 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 correto. Eu atacar. Sim. Sim, sim, sim.
Preparado? Construtor.
Não.
Construtor.
Sim, sim, correto. Qual é? Sim.
Qual é? Vou executar. Sim. Vou fazer. Sim. Preparado. Construtor. Vou fazer. Olá, construtor.
Sim.
Preparado. Construtor. Construtor.
Preparado. Correto.
Preparado. Vou correto. Vou executar.
Qual é? Sim. Preparado. Sim.
Olá, correto. Sim. Construtor. Sim, correto. Vou fazer. Vou executar. Olá, sim, correto. Construtor. Construtor. Qual é? Vou linhador. Olá. Preparado. Linhador. Qual é a sua ordem? Construtor. Sim, correto.
Sim, correto. Sim, lenhadora. Preparada? Correto. Lenhadora. Vou fazer lenhadora. Qual é a sua ordem? Construtora.
Olá. Sim, vou executar. Lenhador.
Sim. Construtora. Preparada? Lenhadora. Qual é a sua
Sim,
ordem?
vou fazer. Lenhador. Qual é a sua ordem?
Lenhadora. Qual é que vou fazer? Construtora. Sim.
Olá. Sim, lenhador. Preparado? Sim. Olá. Vou fazer. Construtor. Sim, lenhador. Olá, lenhador. construtor. Lenhador.
Preparada.
Preparado. Construtor. Olá. Construtor.
Sim. Construtora.
Qual é a sua construtor? Sim, construtor.
Preparada.
Olá, sim, construtor. Preparado. Construtor. Sim, construtor.
Qual é a sua construtora? Camponesa. Olá, lenhadora.
Olá. Construtor.
Preparado. Lenhadora.
Preparado. Construtor. Olá.
Sim. Construtora. Olá. Construtora. Sim. Construtora. Preparada. Lenhadora. Lenhadora.
Preparado. Construtor. Sim. Construtor.
Olá. Construtora. Preparada. Sim. Construtora. Qual é a sua ordem?
Unstoppable Steletsy, and we got a random casted 2 versus 2 game because somebody had horrible internet and disconnected. Is me Primaterio Dia disconnected? Probably Nico Maduro Venezuelan internet, so unfortunately got disconnected. So we're gonna just cast this 2 versus 2 Black Force Nothing battle, which is pretty cool because it's not your ordinary 2 versus 2, obviously. It feels a lot more like Treaty because you're given about the same amount of time that you would get for a TR40 game to be able to get resources, start chopping the trees, and send up your stuff. So notice here right away what happened is you do, fortunately, when your opponent dies in Age of Empires 3, you get the ability to actually delete their buildings so you can build there yourself. Yeah. It's really important for this map because you start in this little teeny weeny little circle that you gradually chop wood to expand. So you need all the space you can get. That's why he deleted all my structures there. He can also delete my villagers too if he really wanted to. And I would probably recommend he does because it actually reduces lag, having less proto units on the field. So probably should delete those villas as well. So yeah, in general, France is going to use up my space to put up production buildings since this appears to be the area where they're chopping towards. Yeah, the enemy team has put a lot of forts up. They got a blockhouse. So they're going to be doing a major push here. It's going to be Portugal and Russia versus, say, France and Germany. Yeah, so, yeah, this should be a pretty interesting battle to say the least. I think the big thing to watch out for with Portugal and Russia, they're going to be mostly spamming infantry instantly. That's going to be their main spiel. Because with the Portuguese, they can basically train their ordnance units, their ordnance riflemen, pikemen instantly, and the Russians can do the same with all their blockhouse units. So the biggest threat to you as France and Germany is going to be instantly training infantry from both players. That'll be the main concern here, I would say. So we'll have to see in about 7 minutes what ends up happening. But I think the main thing France and Germany need to do, they need a lot of artillery, which I think France, particularly with their special card that upgrades artillery, could do to stop all that infantry from pouring in. You know, tons of halberds, tons of pikes, tons of riflemen, tons of streletzis, unstoppable streletzis, actually. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be the main thing. Let me look at their decks, actually. I haven't even looked at what deck setups they have. So Germany, they have the circle card here. That's a really good card because this one allows you to alternate between different natives to ship from it. So you can ship in Brunswickers first, and then the mounted infantry, and then the Saxon Corsairs next. And it allows you to get a pretty big mass of native units that you can put onto the field, which is pretty good. You know, it's what you really want here. Also, everything else is pretty solid for this map, all economic stuff. Does have a Prince Elector option too, so can pick another native to cost population to train. That's nice. I don't think their deck is really lacklustering and all. How about the France? The France is running... Yep, this is the card I was talking about, the Gribeval system. Basically, the Gribeval system really gives you a good combat boost to all your major artillery, your Falcons, your heavy cannons, your horse guns, and your culverins. Essentially making it much better. And I think that's going to be really key to stopping a spam from Portuguese and Russians. Yeah, definitely. Also note that the Portuguese get access to the engineering school as well, so they're going to be able to resupply artillery very quickly. So do the Russians. Russians will be able to resupply their artillery very quickly. And notice all the cards that they got for their infantry. They got both the dueling school card and the fencing school card. These ones combined will lead to instantly training infantry for them. Same thing for Portuguese with their Ordnance Royal Decree for their spearmen and their riflemen. It's going to be a big spam. And also, one thing that the Russians can do too, which is very annoying. I get this card called Pajor's Toy Soldiers. It increases the attack and hit points of Russian heavy infantry, and allows recruits to build forts. So basically the Russians can effectively push forward with the fort if they want to and stick it right on top of your stuff, just like a castle drop in Age of Empires 2, which can be pretty daunting sometimes to deal with. So yeah, that'll be something to look out for here, I think, pretty much. And yeah, we're getting closer to that battle time, under 5 minutes now. Yellow is putting up towers, which is, I think, a pretty smart move, honestly. Stick them all along the perimeters of the trees there, so enemies can't just plop their culverins and mortars right there, right away, and start sniping stuff, which I think is pretty smart for this map. Now, the thing I'm gonna figure out is are these guys gonna make contact on land before the, the treaty ends? Because if it doesn't, then what ends up happening is one of the players has to take their culverins or other artillery and shoot units, and then that projectile that the cannon makes, that object, will actually cut down trees. Just like onagers in Age of Empires 2, except in this case you can't necessarily target the trees. You have to target something near the trees, and it just has to RNG cut those trees down for you. So yeah, it's a little bit more messy that way, but it still gets the job done with a little bit more effort. Looks like my side got the Whittlebach. What else do we have on this map? We got Whittlebach and Bourbon. Eventually they should try to chop in this direction and get the Bourbon ones too, since they have some really good units. I'm trying to think who would want it most. It depends. Did the French have a lot of native cards in their deck? They only got Wilderness Warfare. I would have probably said, why don't you get some combat cards for the native warriors here? And why not get the Huron Mantlets instead of Holy Roman Army? My problem with infinite mercenary armies like this is they cause so much population combined. It's going to be really annoying, man, to try to fit this in when you're trying to constantly train stuff. That's what I think the issue is. If you go for Huron Mantlets, those don't cost any pops, so you can keep popping that button every time it becomes available. For this one, it actually holds you back, because when you do ship it in and it's queuing, that's all that population you can't train now, and it just makes your army smaller and more easy to get swallowed up. So I mean, that'd be my critique for this situation, is pretty much don't include Holy Roman Army for the infinite card. You probably want Mantlets. And you definitely want more native combat cards to work in synergy with Wilderness Warfare. Blood Brothers in this deck is like really bad, because if you do get Huron Mantlets, Warrior Societies that gets sent with the card will handle that for you. Right, I don't even know why he has Blood Brothers in here. That's like so bad, man. Really bad. The rest of the cards are alright though. I mean, Stockyards with ranching, that's an optional one. If you really like herdable economy, you can do this. And theoretically, herdable economy, if it can be well maintained, will be stronger than farming with mills, because the gather rate for the cows is a lot quicker than it is for farming. But you have to maintain it, you have to constantly regulate, more cows getting entered to the pens. Unfortunately, you're not Argentines from Wars of Liberty where you can just get those for free. That's what makes them so good, by the way. Yeah. Alright, so we're almost a minute, and then we'll be into the warfare. Yeah. Russia's already popping their mortars in the... Look at how far they can get through the tree line here to hit those towers. It's already getting pretty close to combat, you know? Yeah. I like how the France gets a ton of artillery to make use of that Grivaball card that I talked about. He's got, like, falconets there, he's got heavy cannons. He made everything. He's got culverins. He's really milking that card very good. And I think that's going to pay off here in the start, at keeping the enemy back and building a good momentum. The Germany is doing Uhlans, which, I can't say that that's the best option. I would have personally went with artillery and, like, Prussian needle gunner skirms myself, and some of your native stuff. I just don't think, unless you can run in good with the hand cav and mitigate the effects of lag. Hand cav and Black Force nothing kind of feels like a dead weight. especially if it lags and they can't target their stuff. Yo, primo. Interesting. Oh, so he's gonna go in first? Okay. And you got the Brunswickers from the Circle Army card. That'll be a nice bit of support. The good thing about these guys is they actually have a better rate of fire than the average musket. They have a rate of fire of about 2, so... Oh, yep, jawohl! Yunnan, angriff! Right after the culverts. Alright, so he did make good use of. But the problem is you got all these proto-chicks there, which will kind of cut through them a bit. Also, it looks like there were so many culverts made by that Russian that he only did a dent in them in the end. Yep, and this is what I'm talking about. These are the ordnance pikemen. These, for Portuguese, can train instantly, so they're a real hassle to deal with, man. They really are. Right, okay, you got the Tower and Sword, Black Riders, too, for Portuguese. The only difference between them and regular Black Riders is those ones have extra hand attack names. So they're a little bit spicier than your average one. But for the sake of this scenario, I don't think that matters a whole lot. Culverins, gotta get in a position, hit those organ guns. Organ guns can be really dangerous for the Portuguese, so you gotta make sure you get on top of those things sooner rather than later. At least force it back a bit. Good. Right, take all that artillery and make good use of it now. Russian mortars on the side there are decimating some buildings, so that's something to definitely be deeply aware of. Falconet's doing a good job at holding back the wave of hand infantry. That's what I said for them to do. Spam a ton of artillery because this Russian and Portuguese machine is going to be battering you with infantry. They can train literally instantly. Literally instantly. Not even exaggerating, they literally train instantly. Right, a few Cossacks popped out. I don't know if that was a mistake or misclick. Might be trying to hit some of those cannons, meat shield a bit. Looks like they're down. So it looks like there's a nice wall of culverins there by the Russians. So it's going to be really hard to crawl in and use that artillery because you know that wall of culverins is going to be like an impending wall. And as long as the Russian player micros, it's going to be very difficult for my team to actually get their artillery up there. It'll be quite the interesting challenge. Alright, so now we got Falconets trying to hit the ordnance riflemen there and some of the proto-chicks. Great. Organ guns are going to go for another swing again. I think the culverins up there too are gradually grinding in as well. I think the most important thing for my team is to hold this choke point. If they lose this choke point, it's kind of really tough. So if they can hold that choke point and not run out of resources, then they have a chance at planning an offense. I kind of don't like how France is not microing his culverins to hit the organs now. That's going to cost them a lot. The longer you let the organ guns stay alive, with the Portuguese, they become a real threat, and they do a lot of value damage against stuff. Yeah, I can tell France really isn't microing his culverins really at all, which is a big problem. That's the reason you make those. If you're not going to micro your culverins, you're better off without them. But you need to use them. You need to use them. And it's not like he cannot afford to make culverins, so he just needs to make sure he micros them. It looks like he is. I can see a little movement down there. Maybe will contain. Oh man! Oh boy! Oop. Got targeted. Not good. I think he got hit by the organ gun myself. It's not good. Not good at all. Portugal was also setting up a mortar right here. Note that the Portuguese do get a card, which I have in my deck called Range Finding. That actually gives more range to the Portuguese mortars, making them really good long range, like nuclear ICBM type siege weapons, which is good. Yep, we got tons of skirms from both Germany and France. This sort of backbone infantry. I think that's quite good. It counters really everything the Portuguese and the Russians are going to throw at them infantry-wise. You know, as unstoppable Streletsy is, he just isn't strong compared to a Prussian needle gun or a French multiplier. So I think that's something worth mentioning. Oh, look at all those ordnance pikemen. He's just sending them in droves. Yeah, that's the scary part about Portuguese. They can afford to like make these big squares of pikemen very quickly, and then just run them in droves and target stuff. Yeah. Oh man, yep, you didn't finish the wall piece there, son. That's not good. Hello? That's not good. Because now he can go through the enemy lines, he can target factories, he can target mills, and disrupt that whole economy now. That's very bad. He's going to go after the factories first. Look at this. Look at what he caused now by not finishing that wall. Very unfortunate. Are they going to try to salvage it, or what? Oh, he's got to fight with the Bills. Look at that. I don't think you're going to beat him back with Bill. Oh, wait a second now. Wait a second. What's going on here? Oh, he made Jaegers. Oh, I thought he was attacking with Bills. I saw like the female head covering. I thought that was... No, that's a Jaeger. Okay. So yeah, mercenaries to the rescue, I guess. Good. Losing a factory in these late game modes is like nearly fatal, usually, because you need that big trickle to make sure that you don't run out of stuff. And then obviously if you start getting a surplus in that resource and armor starts running low, then you can alternate to that resource. That's what makes factories quite flexible. France is starting out in halberdiers. That big drove of Jaegers from the Germany is also starting to get into the front. Jaegers are going to decimate anything infantry-wise and dragoon-wise that the enemy does. You know, they're basically a skirmisher, but better because they have more attack, more hit points, and they have more armor, which is the key one. They have like 40% armor, which is much better than the average skirm, which only has like 30% armor. And they got to do something about these big droves of ordnance pikemen trying to break in. You know, I think they helped it a little bit here with that tower, but still. Oh, good, they covered the hole. They covered the hole. That's very important. Looks like they're maintaining the choke point. Otherwise, Falconet's doing a good job at keeping the infantry in check. You just need to get some culverins in there and deal with that wall of Russian culverins there. They've been there for a while now. If you can do that, I think you have a chance of pushing, which you really want to do here. Alright, so halberdiers doing a great job at fighting the infantry. That's one of the things we can do with halberdiers, by the way. They're not just good against cavalry. If you use them in the right numbers at the right time, they can actually pressure skirmishers too. Because halberdiers have the same sort of hand attack and rate of fire as like a hussar or a Ulan or a Cossack. So when done properly, a big stack of halberdiers, if they're not being specifically targeted, can actually decimate an army of skirms. Just as good as handcap can, you know, and that makes them somewhat of a threat, you know, what they normally are good at. And of course they have great siege too, so I mean, yeah, halberdiers are one of those units that if you don't heed enough warning to them, they're like one of the best units in the game by the tasks that they can perform. Right, but if you pay attention to them and you target them down with skirms and artillery, then they sort of, you know, get controlled. But if you don't control them, they become a real mess. Yeah, we see Russians trying to wedge into the flank here. Thankfully, though, the Saxon cuirassiers comes up to the front to deal with them. These guys are great at battle because they have splash attack. Really important because they can damage multiple units at the same time. Quite good. Another drove of ordnance pikemen coming in from the Portuguese. This time, I think, towards the artillery. Thankfully, was completely intercepted there. Good move there. More ordnance riflemen coming out. Yep. Basically, ordnance riflemen are kind of similar to the crossbowmen, except that they have the stats of a skirmisher. So, pretty much like a better crossbow, basically. That became like a real skirmisher in stats, so yeah. France is moving forward, but not attacking. I would say probably pay attention to that so you can snag a few good kills there. Just trying to blast into both of the infantry masses, the Russians and the Portuguese. Having some success, but as I said before, as you can see up at that barracks, with the Portuguese, they can instantly train this stuff. So as long as they have the food in the wood, they can look at those big armies just instantly popping out there. That's what makes Portuguese sick. And Russia's doing the same thing with the blockhouse. Look at how many recruits just came out of that thing. That's what you have to deal with the Russians and Portuguese. They're gonna always be able to resupply, unless their fingers get tired and they, you know, knuckles start start getting sore. If the player's knuckles don't get sore, then they'll just be able to keep spamming it. That's basically all I could say about those things. And it was never that way before with the Portuguese because they didn't have that type of ability. But once, you know, the 5th edition came around, they changed the World Decree, then they sort of became Russian-esque in that aspect. Only there, the Portuguese have strong stuff too, like, you know, Halberdiers and Royal Musketeers and Royal Dragoons. So Portugal's a real messy sit to deal with because they can either go with really good stuff, relatively speaking, or they can just do the spam like the Russians. And it really doesn't bother them either way. That being said, there's another triangle of culverins up there on the top left side over there. A few Portuguese organ guns being targeted right now. Get that culverin, France, and hit those organ guns, please. That's like your number one job. Don't even worry about the culverins yet. Just get those organs down. Because the organs are going to get a ton of value if you just let them sit there too long. And you're going to end up bleeding from your resources trying to deal with it. Indeed, it's a very important thing for